Okay, first of all, thank you so much for choosing to be here today with us. And a special thank you to Misak, who created this opportunity, first of all, for me to share my thesis and the research with you. Happy Mother's Day, by the way, whoever is a mother here and mothers who are not here with us today. So let's start. The thesis is about Armenians living in London. I looked at from a psychological perspective. So my profession is, I'm a doctor in counseling, psychology, and psychotherapy. So what it means is doctors in this field, they complete clinical hours, supervised clinical hours, which means they work with clients in one-to-one basis, and also a research needs to be completed. This is independent research, which I will be sharing mine with you today. So often people confuse mental health professions, and they have so much questions. So I hear this question of what is the difference between a psychiatrist with a psychologist, counseling psychologist, clinical psychologist, psychotherapy, counseling. So many names, which some of them are protected titles, which without completing a certain training, people cannot use that. However, unfortunately, it's not that strict in the UK, so people do use it. I do recommend that whoever who needs mental health support, don't be shy and ask questions. Ask about the professional's training, qualification, years of experience, and it's your right to know. So the difference between psychiatrists are medical doctors, which means they can diagnose the patient, and also they can provide medication. Psychotherapists and counseling psychologists, clinical psychologists, so these professionals, they do offer talking therapy. So it's very different with the medical field. And they may hold a title of doctorate, they may not. So it's entirely up to the client or patient if they want to choose which one. So this only shows the duration of the training that one has completed. And often you hear something like CBT, you hear person-centered therapy, existential therapy. So these are just modalities that one therapist has been trained to use for. Integrative is something which usually people don't know the differences. And if you hear it, if you hear a practitioner is using CBT technique, just Google it and make sure you know what it is. Because I don't think I mean, if the NHS is offering is different, certain sessions of, I think, 6 to maximum 8 sessions of free sessions. If you see the therapist in private basis, it's not cheap, so it's your right to know what you're seeking for. Sorry, I've already mentioned this, so I'm pausing. If you're interested, I can share all these slides with you. I can also share the whole thesis. If you're interested and prepared to read it, it's 200 plus pages. But slides are composed, and I'm happy to share. Or if you have any certain questions about the research which you're not comfortable, or for whatever reason you don't want to ask in the group, I will be staying here after the session, so you can just come to me and I will explain it. So the aim of the research was to explore how life is experienced by Armenians who live in London. Who are Armenians? So some of us, I can see some of us are Armenian here, and if not, I'm not going to go into much detail about this. It's just a couple of important points which, as majority of us know, Armenians in total are 10 million people living worldwide, 7 million in the diaspora, and 3 million in Republic of Armenia. 20,000 people live in the UK. The mass migration started in 1915 of Armenian genocide, and Armenians' culture and language is Indo-European language. Mainly Armenians practice in Armenian Apostolic Church, not necessarily all of them, and I've mentioned Bakalian in 1993 named Armenians hidden ethnic, and this is the reason that in some diaspora we are not known. My link to Armenia, as I said, I was born in Tehran into Armenian parents. I came to this country when I was 24. I couldn't speak the English language, and I came here without my family. So then I started, of course, learning the language, working here. I started my education journey, and I have experienced, I've had traumatic experiences living in Iran. I have seen the revolution. After that 8 years of Iran-Iraq war, I have lost my 18-year-old close friend. He was a soldier, and many more, which I'm not going into so much details. What is relevant is, because I have been there, I can guide my clients. Under my professional work, so I have started working professionally in the UK as a volunteer in the Armenian Center here, and I have supported clients in psychological basis, and then last 3 years I provided group psychotherapy and one-to-one counseling. I also work with BAME community, mainly working with women who have experienced domestic violence, individuals and clients facing different type of traumas, addictions, substance misuse, especially alcohol and drug. So under literature review, I have looked into the history of Armenians and sense of belonging. And sense of belonging from existential perspective. Trauma and transgenerational trauma, which Armenians have experienced, and also trauma from existential perspective, and the experience of adaptation and acculturation. So if I go deep into all of these 4 sections, we will be sitting here for a week. So that's not possible. So I have to I've just highlighted them, and I spoke with Misak, so in a number of series of sessions, we will organize some talks and workshops going into detail of every angle separately. So the rationale for this research was literally there is no study looking from psychological perspective in London, so there is a gap. Clinicians who work with Armenians in London, the service that they provide, and I'm not only talking about mental health professionals, I'm talking about teachers, social workers, policymakers. So the service that they're providing, unfortunately, is not culturally sensitive. Armenians have unique culture. Not only they have a core unique Armenian culture, but they also have subcultures within them, which I have looked into it in the research to raise the awareness for individuals. I mean, not only Armenian themselves can know themselves and their community better, but for professionals. And also another rationale was every individual is different. So we cannot really categorize everyone under one culture. So simply we hear an accent and then we start assuming this person, putting people into categories. What I have done and shown in the research is every individual is unique on its own, and professionals need to look at them individually. When it comes to Armenians, it's a little bit more complex because we come from everywhere, and simply we cannot put under one ethnic minority of just call it Armenians. So the 8 participants have helped me to create this research. I needed a homogeneous sample to come up with the outcome. So I'm not going into the technical part of methodology because I don't think that would interest you. If any of you is a student here, then you can approach me after the class. I will explain it to you. But in order to do this, a homogeneous sample is needed. So my participants, they have all been Armenians, speaking English language. So all the interviews were in English language. They have lived here over 2 years and reside in London. Because individuals who live outside London, their lived experience is very much different, because Armenians in London, they have a community here, and for so many other reasons. This democratic thing is not... Yeah, I'm going to pass this. This is the stages of analysis. Again, any student who needs any support, they can approach me after the class and I will help them with this. These fancy words are philosophical words. What is simply mean ontology, epistemology, methodology? This means the knowledge who is out there and how we know what we know. So when we talk about methodology, it means how we get into the outcome of a research. And the pictures that you see here, this gentleman is a very famous philosopher, Heidegger, German philosopher. If you're interested in philosophy, I would recommend to read his book, Being and Time. So what he literally, what he brought, his thinking was, human being is we are meaning creature, and we create meaning in a context. So what he did, before Heidegger, philosophers talked a lot about metaphysics. So he critiqued all of that. Plato, Aristotle, I think we've heard about them. Descartes, Hegel, so Husserl, all of these philosophers, they talked about metaphysics. What Heidegger did, he brought this into human existence. So what he said, only human is that exist. So animals don't exist from his perspective. Objects don't exist. Why human exists? Because human is open to possibilities. We could be born in any other country, coming and reside here, make the decision to come here, reside in the UK, grow here, we can go back to another country. So this is only possible for human. I hope it's understandable. It's only human who has this prefrontal cortex which can use and animals cannot. I mean, at least at this stage, it's not developed yet. Jonathan Smith is, following the thinking of Heidegger, he came up with this method of how to analyze individuals' lived experience. And Heidegger looked at human being from psychological, physical, and social perspective. So what he believed and his thinking was, we cannot look into a human being from only one dimension. A human being has 3 different dimensions. And what Emmy van Derzen added was not only, apart from these 3 different dimensions, there is another dimension which is a spiritual dimension, and she added that. Again, today I'm not going to go into details of that, but just hold on to this, because then when I'm talking about the findings, you will see the relevance. So after analyzing the gathered information and lived experience of 8 participants, revealed 4 main themes from these experiences, and under all main themes, associated some themes, which again, using some examples like direct quotations from participants, I will explain more and it will be more clear. So what it means is, when I say the Armenian history and heritage, Armenian culture, community, and the experience of adaptation and acculturation, that means all 8 participants has expressed some kind of lived experience in relation to these themes. Okay. Now it will be more, and I will be reading, I'm not sure how, I don't think it's clear for you to see from there, so I will read some quotes for you. So in regards with the Armenian culture, what participants expressed was Armenian culture is very much interwoven with the Armenian church. So what they've expressed was the church has helped the Armenian culture to sustain. Like in the Armenian church, it exists the architecture, the art, or the church is supporting as a social venue for people to come together, celebrate the culture, and none of the participants expressed any spiritual or religious affiliation with the church. This doesn't mean it doesn't exist, it just my participants haven't experienced that. So mainly it was to do with, connected with the culture. one interesting quote here, I would read it from Minas. In Iran, when you've got a Muslim state, maybe you need to push that in the forefront and say, we are a religious Christian minority within a Muslim society. And that gives it some kind of authority. But in a Western liberal country like Britain, we should have our own kind of identity. We don't need a church or a religious identity to exist. We're an ethnic minority, we are a cultural community. So clearly saying here that we should start separating the church from our ethnic minority. The Armenian genocide was again connected to the church. So, for example, one of the participants said church had a big impact when the Armenian genocide happened, because it kind of protected people in the church. So what I'm trying to do is the link between the church and the Armenian genocide. 6 of 8 participants expressed either direct traumatic experience when it came to this subject and theme, or transgenerational trauma was clearly presented in the experience of participants. And I will read like 2 quotes, both of them grandchildren of genocide survival. From Rafi, I still feel very raw and I think the wound is still open. For me, it doesn't matter if the whole world accepts that it was a genocide. And we know it was because my grandfather was one who actually witnessed. I feel the political situation doesn't allow the facts to come up and be said in an open way. And from Minas, I remember at one point my mother said to me, when we were in England, we are never going to settle 100%, but we must always have a suitcase ready packed, just in case something happens and ready to go. So this is clearly an example of transgenerational trauma. So even though Minas hasn't experienced the genocide directly, and living in a place who is relatively safe here, but still hearing this message from his mother that we can't be 100% safe. This is transgenerational trauma. And another interesting one who is showing that this individual is in a conflict of, in one hand, wanting to keep the legacy of what happened to her ancestors and grandfather, and on the other hand, this dilemma of whether to pass this to my children or not. She said, my grandfather used to talk about it a lot openly. He witnessed worse horrors when he was 15. Seeing his family being killed, you are born with this knowledge in your head and this burden of genocide and all the trauma and all this expectation. I told that to my child, which I'm questioning, is it the right thing to do? So I'm not going to go through all the codes, it would be too much and it will bore you. But I will share the slides with you so you can have samples there. The next sub-theme was the loss of heritage and culture, which again is relevant to the Armenian genocide, because due to the genocide, Armenians have lost some of their cultural values and heritage. For example, I will read, okay, Aram is a young participant. fourth generation of genocide survival, and third generation immigrant. I feel like if it wasn't for the fact that my culture was isolated and dying, I probably wouldn't care. But it is, and I think that's the case with a lot of Armenians, the sense of responsibility to hold on to what you have and preserve it. You might say nobody speaks the ancient Egyptian language or ancient Greek or whatever. Armenian is an ancient language of ancient people, and losing that would be a huge historical loss, and it would be sad for all of us. So even though he is quite young and third generation, but still losing the culture is very sad for him, and it's very meaningful. Another one, what I think any Armenian really should try to prove is that, particularly with our past history, that we have suffered terribly, old Armenian, that culture, everything disappeared within a few months. So this, expressing this feeling of pain for losing the culture. Family closeness revealed in the experiences of all participants, which means family is quite important in Armenians, and a strong cultural value. The only thing that I may miss is the close cultural tapestry that we had in Iran, that we don't have in England. Like, for example, uncles, aunties, cousins, and we went to their houses without telephoning them. We just went and knocked on the door and went in. That part obviously is very different here. The next two are quite similar. Okay, Armenia's experience was, she expressed quite difficulty to raising her children here without family support. It was very hard to come to this country without your parents. For me, it was very hard. I left my mom, dad, my siblings, and all my relatives and came here, and I was feeling very lonely. Armenian language was another theme. So, what time is it? Would you like me to go through a couple of quotes again, carrying like this, or just, okay, yeah. I think it makes it more real and more present, yeah. So in regards with the language, Ani, who is a young participant, expressed pride speaking the language. For Armenia, it was quite important to speak the language. She mentioned pure Armenian. This is actually used for someone who speaks the language. So for her, it's that important. And for Aram, it was like speaking the language, bringing intimacy, saying, when I'm in Lebanon, where my family is, they speak Western Armenian, you know, that feels more at home. So he feels at home when he's somewhere who people speak the language. Another one, I feel proud to tell people I speak Armenian because not many people do speak Armenian, and explaining how our alphabet is different. Ani expressed worry about losing the Armenian language. She is a young participant. I hope that the language continues, because I see the people who are just above my generation, who are now 29, 30, and some of them have children. Some of those children don't speak the language, and they're very completely westernized. So this is worrying her. For Aram, it's like in a country who mainstream doesn't speak Armenian, it's a challenge of speaking and keeping the language, especially for young people. And sometimes it's just easier to drop it. And Nare said, it hurts me to say our children are losing their roots and their culture and their language. I came across this interesting poem from Bagdasarian, which I thought it would be nice to share it with you. Take my message to the world, my child, to my people, my blood and my bones. Tell my people how hard it was to save our language. Tell my people that our language has to be alive as long as we breathe. Tell them it has to be the language of our heart and mind. Tell them it has to be not replaced. Tell them it has to be passed to our next generation. Our language has to be alive or else we will die. Just a little bit of silence to reflect on it. It's so beautiful, I think. Then revealed Armenian subculture. So as I mentioned earlier, Armenians coming from the diaspora, they have subcultures. Aram is, one of the younger participants said, one of the biggest things I struggle with Armenia is the whole Russian aspect. I feel very Middle Eastern. Whenever I go to an Arabic restaurant, I kind of feel at home. So this is a very good example of, for clinicians who work with Armenians, you can't just assume that if someone is saying I'm Armenian, then they're related to Armenia. He is clearly relating to Arabic food. Another one, when I go to Armenia, it's kind of like I get conflicted. Half of me thinks, this is nice, this is great, this is Armenia, signs are Armenian, this is cool. But then the other half of me is like, well, hang on, you barely understand these people. They don't seem to understand me. I'm not talking linguistically, I'm talking culturally. And beautifully carries on with Armenians come from everywhere. People simplify it nowadays as the Eastern and Western, but it's so much more than that. Even in small regions, there was literally every village had its own dialect. So we cannot really separate it from Eastern and Western Armenian. It's not that simple. Another one, again, just to remind you that this is subjective experience, an opinion of one person that I'm talking. So Eastern Armenians, Western Armenians, Iranian Armenians stick together. Cypriot Armenians stick together. They're all snobbery about each other. Cypriot Armenians, I like them. They're a bit crazy, but they're warm, very funny. They're playful, but that playfulness, we don't have that in Armenia. Iranian Armenians, I like. They're so gentle, they're so sweet and calm, and we don't have that. Oh, we are stressed all the time. The theme of higher education revealed in the experiences of 6 participants. The biggest thing that's important for my parents, they say, we came to this country for me to have a good education, so it's probably the most important thing for whatever I do to be the most successful in. In the future, I will have better prospects and be able to have things that my parents didn't have. For example, a university degree, that's important. So what I'm hearing is Anahit is kind of feeling this burden of parents migrating. and she needs to achieve because of the possible discomfort and suffering that the parents have been through. Annie said, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunities that I've had here that if I was living even in Iran. Education, university, I think access to these kind of things in this country is relatively supported. You've got the government backing you if you don't have the means to get to university. So again, this feeling of if the opportunity is given, then use it. And she's thankful for that. Armia's experience was, when I was in Tehran, all parents would force their children to become either a doctor, a scientist, high jobs, you know. So we hear this a lot in the Armenian community. So not only the higher education is important, the subject of the study is important. And Armina is expressing her experience as, my friends became so stressed to become a doctor, a subject that they didn't like. I told my children that whatever you want and you wish, as long as you're happy and you know that you can have a good degree and go to a good university and finish it. So interestingly, Armina is expressing some kind of objection with enforcing children to take certain subjects, which is the society, the community wants that, but they don't want it. But she is mentioning here, good degree, good university, finish it. So kind of in a hidden language, she's doing the same thing in a different format. I don't know if you would agree with that. I mean, this is my interpretation. I worry that a lot of parents in the community are too concerned about what the wider community would think about their children if they didn't go and study, you know, medicine or science or law or history. I think that's a problem. I know my parents very much pushed me to study and pursue a career in something, but that was mainly because I wanted to do this career. I was never told you have to study science. The connection to the community revealed in the experiences of all participants. The experience of Anahit was a liberating feeling knowing that there are people similar to you in the community. It's nice to have events and express the fact that you are Armenian and celebrate your Armenian traditions and meet people from the same place as you in a different part of the world. It brings people together so you never feel alone, you never feel like an outcast in society because you belong in that group. And I want other kids to have the same experience that I had when I was growing up, because I wouldn't change it for the world. Having Armenian friends is the biggest blessing. This was quite touching. Nare expressed it in a humorous way. It's like Italian mafia. Once you are in, you can't get out. You end up caring for them, you end up loving them. There will be an old professor that you fall in love with, you go to his lectures, etc., etc. As a community, we are quite close together, so whatever you do or say goes around in the community. So this came out like challenges that individuals have been facing in the community. And all the outside, all the influences from the community can make it quite difficult to figure out who you are by yourself, because you're often thinking, oh, what would the community do? Nare's experience was how molecules move like in completely without any pattern around each other, in complete chaos. That is how I visualize the Armenian community. It's like a movement which doesn't follow any rules. So it's hard work. There is a lot of richness, but we don't do collective work together, so it's hard work. I think some of us here can relate to that.
Very much so.
Couple of another challenges. Okay, this is quite interesting because she's talking about mental health. Armenians need to be more open to accepting that some people have mental health issues, and some children are born differently. They have learning problems, they struggle. So I think we need to involve these people more and make them feel more welcome in our community, because I don't think we do that at the moment. She added, I know where my parents grew up in Iran. Mental health wasn't recognized as much as it is in this society. You know, depression wasn't regarded as a disease. Anxiety wasn't even a term that existed in their kind of culture. So many Armenians who have come here have brought those ideas here with them. We're coming to the end of the themes. The last theme was the experience of adaptation and acculturation. Participants, actually all of them, they're related to this associated sub-theme of gratitude. They were thankful from English people and the UK to give them opportunities like career opportunity, education, London being multicultural society, so for them not feeling an outcast. And also, okay, Minas has mentioned one of the positive things of this country is that it's a liberal society, that it doesn't have freedoms which in certain countries you don't have. Whether it's starting your own business, it offers you security which you don't have in Middle East or certain countries which you feel threatened. You know, it's not a dictatorship, it's not, you know, wars. And it's interlinked with sense of belonging. So, individuals who have felt safe in this country and felt that they've had opportunity for growth, they also had sense of belonging here. And it came across as, for example, my homeland is in England because I think England has given me a lot. And I have given as much as I was able to. The tolerance in England towards foreigners, I think, is next to none in this world. They were very welcoming when I came. They really helped me a lot, so I really felt like this is my home. And for a younger generation, she expressed it as, I do belong here because this is where I've grown up. This is where I've lived my whole life, and I don't know any different. There was some emotional connection with the country of origin, specifically with the ones who were first-generation immigrants. For example, Armenia's experience was, the only thing that makes me happy is that I go back to my birthplace. I have good memories. However, my life is here, my husband is working, my children are born here. So for me, it's difficult to go back to my birthplace. I can't go back to my birthplace and live there because of my children. So this existing in between two worlds. In one hand, she has to be here because her life is here, husband and children are settled here, and emotionally she's connected to the country of origin when her original family is living. Another very beautiful example, the experience of Minas. However old I get, I still don't feel at home anywhere. Some of us can relate to this. It's partially to do with the fact that at a young age I lost a lot of things which were important to me at the time. So I was literally, I don't know how old I was, maybe 7, 8 years old. We left our home in Turkey, came to Cyprus. I haven't been back to my house since then. So this feeling of unfinished business, not having an ending, and this is very much relevant to why people emotionally are connected to the country of origin, because they haven't had an ending. Last theme, integration with English society. Some of the participants have faced some challenges. For example, Anahit, a young participant, like just dating someone was made to be such a huge mistake. But I don't feel like I did anything that bad. Because I'm Armenian, it was such a bad thing. But literally just dating someone was considered a huge, huge mistake. That's the main problem that I've experienced as an Armenian, just being a teenager. An example from Rafi, to be able to give that culture to the country which has adopted me, to say, yes, we can do this, we have done this, and share it, because a good culture is not only for one country, it's an international thing. So seeing the importance of integration with sharing the culture with other people. I would say I'm definitely at a disadvantage because I have cousins and what they've allowed to do, I'm still not allowed to do it. From a young age, it wouldn't be staying out late, having certain friends, going to specific places on their own, having independence, even relationships, date who they want to date, that I would be like, why can't they go out till whenever they want, but I can't? To have that was so frustrating because we are at the same age level. I would say maturity-wise, I was more mature than them. I still experience it to this day, but not as much because I stand my ground and I say no. So still experiencing this gender difference, even in this country as a young generation. Ani's experience was she felt she became independent a little bit later than her English friends. And she expressed that as Armenian parents being stricter because of that. I'm just trying to pick the best example. Armenian parents, I would say, are usually a lot stricter, and the British let their children be independent sooner. I think the British usually move out of their parents' houses much sooner. We don't do that. The British group of friends that I have are from other cultures, so they're not British themselves. So it's easier to understand each other. Their parents think similarly, and it's a bit easier. So similar examples. And Minas has experienced this integration as moving away from the Armenian identity and coming back to it. The study had some limitations, as I explained in the beginning, because I needed a homogeneous sample for this study, so I had to exclude Armenians who are living outside London, Armenians who have been refugees, because my participants were volunteer migrants. And the participants were from 3 subcultures. And English speakers migrants who cannot speak English and only speak Armenian, their lived experience is very much different from people who can speak the language. So as the result of that, I have suggested some further study to, hopefully someone would do this and study further specifically on Armenian refugees. It is very relevant now because we have Armenians who are coming from Ukraine and who have language barrier. So the study mainly was to support the clinicians how to work with Armenians. So the study will help clinicians, as I mentioned earlier, not only mental health clinicians, but other service providers who work with these 20,000 people. And also Armenians themselves, by reading the research, can have a better awareness in regards with knowing themselves better, understanding the issues, how to work with their children, how to relate with the community, and so on and so forth. And also, it's very, it would be supportive for other BAME communities as well, because there are lots of similar issues going on. It's not specifically for Armenians. So as the result, hopefully, if the clinicians read the research, they can provide a culturally sensitive service to Armenians. Armenians have unique culture, as I have mentioned, and we have seen in the codes as well. A clinician who has been trained to work in an individualistic society and looking at the matters from individualistic lens, they may not know the importance of, for example, the family, the importance of the community for Armenians and the wider society. Armenian identity is not a fixed term. So this is vital to understand, and the research is clearly showing that. Integration is creating an opportunity for the identity to change. And this is just an example of, the research was about the ethnic identity, but even the gender identity, the sexual identity, all of these are fluid, and it's important to understand this. It is not fixed. This can change. And it's important for practitioners to understand this. What is preventing some Armenians from feeling completely at home in their new location? So we have seen in the experience of Minas Not everyone would feel at home in this country just because it's providing safety and security. And also, sense of belonging is not always geographically. The research clearly says that sense of belonging can be relational. Some people, they have this sense of belonging to other people, again, to family, to community, to wider society. So no two Armenians are the same. And this is not only practitioners need to look at every individual and in their unique way of being. And they cannot assume that they're holding the same religious beliefs and cultural values. Practitioners need to know that mental health is a stigma in Armenians, so Armenians don't open up easily. And the research, if you read the thesis in details, it's more clear there. It's mentioned in the thesis that sometimes clients, or patients, they go to their GP. We have you can approach to, we have a GP here, so he can explain it in a more wider context for us. But individuals go and they complain about a physical pain, and after a number of examinations, everything is normal, but the pain is there for years and years. So what I'm saying is, if we examine a patient who is physically suffering from a pain and it doesn't show anything after examination, which is something physical, is to do with mental health. Ask questions. Armenians don't open up easily. Practitioners need to ask questions. And if they haven't experienced direct trauma, it's important to ask about what happened to their parents, transgenerational trauma, what happened to their grandparents. So what I'm saying in the research is Armenian clients are likely to bring specific issues into the therapy room which are not necessarily similar to other populations of clients, and that practitioners need to be aware of how to work sensitively with this. Thank you so much for listening, and I really appreciate your time for being here.